The delicate clink of champagne glasses was the last sound of my perfect life. Then, a sickening crack as one slipped, shattering on the polished marble. In that sharp silence, a child's joyful shout cut through me. "Daddy!" My glittering world dissolved into 1,000 jagged pieces. The man I loved, the woman I trusted, their betrayal, stark and chilling, crashed down. Before that devastating crash, my world had been a carefully curated masterpiece. For 7 years Samuel, my ambitious architect husband, and I had built a life that seemed plucked from the pages of a glossy magazine. Our home, perched on a quiet cul-de-sac with sprawling views of the city skyline, was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a testament to our shared dreams. A canvas for the future we meticulously planned together. We had spent countless weekends poring over architectural magazines, debating tile samples for the kitchen, and lovingly restoring antique finds for the living room. Each carefully chosen piece, from the gleaming mahogany dining table where we hosted lively dinner parties to the plush velvet armchairs by the fireplace, where we'd read side by side, with the quiet melody of our love. Or so I believed. Samuel, with his captivating smile and an innate ability to make anyone feel like the most important person in the room, was the anchor of this perfect existence. He was the kind of man whose ambition was infectious, whose laughter was genuine, and whose gaze, when it met mine across a crowded room, promised an eternity of shared joy. Looking back, perhaps that charm was too well honed, too universally applied, a warning sign I was too blinded by affection to see. And then, there was Heather, my best friend, my confidante, a whirlwind of vivacious energy, who had been by my side through thick and thin since college. We'd bonded over shared anxieties in our freshman dorm, navigating the confusing labyrinth of young adulthood side by side, our loyalty forging a bond I believed was impenetrably. She was more than just a friend. She was the sister I never had, the first person I'd call with good news, the shoulder I'd lean on during bad. Heather was a frequent, cherished presence in our home, her laughter echoing through the halls during our movie nights, her advice always readily offered during our long coffee chats. She and Samuel had developed a comfortable camaraderie over the years, a bond I admired, seeing it as another thread reinforcing the beautiful tapestry of my life. She was family, a permanent fixture in the landscape of my happiness. I was Teresa, the woman who had it all, a successful career as a marketing executive, a charming and devoted husband, a loyal best friend, and a life brimming with potential. We talked of children, maybe 2, a boy and a girl. Samuel would often muse, of exotic travels to far-flung locales, of growing old together in that very house, surrounded by memories of a life well lived. There was an unspoken certainty that our bond was unbreakable, our future bright, our happiness unwavering. I walked through each day with a quiet confidence, wrapped in the comforting illusion that I was living my own personal fairy tale. Little did I know, beneath the polished surface, the wood was already rotting, and the architect of my dreams had been systematically dismantling them, brick by painstaking brick. For years, while the sister I cherished stood by, a willing accomplice. That very evening, the anniversary celebration we had so meticulously planned, unfolded like a dream. Our sprawling living room, usually a haven of quiet elegance, throbbed with the lively hum of conversation and laughter. Chandeliers cast a warm golden glow on the faces of our dearest friends and family, their champagne flutes chiming in unison with our shared happiness. Samuel, resplendent in his bespoke suit, moved through the crowd with effortless charm. A proud host, a loving husband. He'd pause to exchange a warm word with an old college friend, then catch my eye from across the room, his smile a secret language only we understood, promising another 70 years just like this. I, in my shimmering emerald gown, felt like the queen of my own perfect kingdom, a woman truly blessed, radiating the quiet confidence of a life perfectly aligned. It was the absolute zenith of everything I believed we had built. Just as Samuel began to tap a spoon against his glass, ready to deliver a toast that I knew would be heartfelt and eloquent, the double doors leading from the foyer swung open. Heather, a vision in a vibrant sapphire dress, entered, a slight flush on her cheeks, her signature vivacity a beacon. Clinging to her hand was Amanda, her 3-year-old daughter, a whirlwind of blonde curls and wide, curious blue eyes. Amanda, usually shy around crowds, seemed particularly energetic tonight, squirming free from Heather's grip almost immediately. My smile widened, a natural instinct. I made a mental note to steal a moment with my best friend later, to congratulate her on the adorable dress Amanda was wearing. Then, it happened. Amanda didn't run towards her mother, who was now exchanging air kisses with a mutual friend near the entrance. Instead, her small legs propelled her straight across the polished floor, directly towards Samuel, who was standing beside me, her eyes so innocently bright, locked onto his. Before any of us could react, before Heather could even call out her name, Amanda launched herself at him, her arms reaching up. "Daddy," she chirped, her voice a pure, unadulterated burst of joy that pierced through the murmurs of the room like a shard of ice. The world seemed to tilt. For a split second, I didn't comprehend. "Daddy?" The word echoed, a foreign, impossible sound in my perfect world. My mind scrambled, searching for an explanation. A game? A childish mistake? Samuel's usually impeccable composure fractured, his face drained of color, his jaw clenched, eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen. He stiffened, frozen, his arms hovering, unable to embrace or deflect the child. Across the room, Heather had gone utterly still, her sapphire dress suddenly looking like a trap, her face a mask of horrified realization. Her frantic gaze darted between Amanda, Samuel, and finally, me. In that silent, agonizing blink, the truth, so monstrous and undeniably, slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. 4 years. 4 years of lies, of secrets, of a double life, meticulously constructed beneath the very roof of my trust. Amanda, Heather, Samuel. The pieces clicked into place, grotesque and devastating. A collective gasp rippled through the room, a wave of stunned silence following Amanda's innocent utterance. The joyful chatter had died, replaced by an uncomfortable, suffocating stillness. All eyes, I felt, were on me. The burning shame, the scalding rage, threatened to consume me whole, but deep within, a steel rod of defiance solidified my spine. I would not crumble, not here. Not now. My smile, which had been so genuine moments ago, felt like a brittle mask. I gently disentangled my arm from Samuel's unyielding grip. My movements slow, deliberate, each step a testament to an unbearable effort of will. Without a word, without a glance back at the petrified trio, Samuel, Heather, and the oblivious Amanda, still looking up at him expectantly, I turned, and with a quiet dignity I didn't know I possessed, walked away from the shattered remnants of my perfect life, leaving behind the burgeoning chaos and whispered questions of our guests. My feet moved, one after another, guiding me away from the wreckage. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to escape the suffocating air, the stares, the twisted tableau of my betrayers. The chill of the night air was a shock against my flushed skin, a stark contrast to the burning inferno within me. Each step took me further from the opulent facade, yet deeper into a vortex of pain so profound it threatened to swallow me whole. The vibrant emerald gown now felt like a shroud, heavy with the weight of shattered illusions. I made it to my car, the silent hum of the engine, a faint counterpoint to the screams in my head. I drove aimlessly at first, then with a fierce, almost desperate urge to simply put distance between myself and that house, that life. The full weight of the betrayal settled in, cold and crushing. 4 years, not a casual mistake, not a momentary lapse of judgment, but a sustained, deliberate campaign of deception that had been running concurrently with my supposedly perfect marriage. 4 years of Heather's warm hugs, her knowing glances, her whispered confidences, each one a lie, a performance. 4 years of Samuel's tender touch, his reassuring words, his grand pronouncements of love and forever. Each one a dagger. They had woven their illicit life into the very fabric of mine, so deeply intertwined that I hadn't seen the knots, the fraying edges, every shared laugh with Heather, every quiet evening with Samuel, every future dream we'd meticulously planned together. They were all poisoned, retroactively rendered hollow and false. The audacity of it, the sheer unadulterated arrogance, made my stomach churn with a sickening blend of disgust and a nascent, terrifying rage. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had made a fool of me, and in front of everyone. For a moment, all I wanted to do was scream until my throat was raw, to smash everything I owned, to burn down the house where so many lies had been told, I felt a visceral urge to curl into a ball and weep until I had no tears left. But then, as the initial shock began to crystallize into something harder, a colder, sharper thought began to form, cutting through the agony. No. I would not be the broken woman. I would not be the victim left weeping in the wreckage of her life. They had built their illicit world on the ruins of mine, but I would not let them win. A different kind of fire began to ignite within me, a slow, deliberate burn that promised not mere vengeance, but a meticulous, unforgiving justice. I wouldn't merely destroy. I would dismantle, piece by careful piece, and ensure they reaped what they had so meticulously sown. This wasn't about a fleeting explosion of anger. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my agency, and ensuring they paid a price commensurate with their monumental deceit. My fingers trembled as I fumbled for my phone in the dark. There was only one person I could call, one fierce, unwavering presence, who would understand the depth of this wound, and wouldn't hesitate to stand by me. Rebecca, my younger sister, always my protector, even when I thought I didn't need one. She lived states away, but her loyalty was a force of nature. Her voice when she answered was laced with concern. Teresa? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? You sound odd. The carefully constructed dignity I'd worn like armor at the party finally crumbled. The raw, guttural sound of my broken heart escaped, a sob that shook my entire body. Rebecca, I choked out, the name tasting like ash. It's Samuel. And Heather. They betrayed me. They have a child. His child. The words tumbled out, disjointed and desperate, painting a grotesque picture of the evening's events. Rebecca listened, silent for a long moment. Then her voice, usually so light, hardened with an intensity that matched my own simmering fury. Teresa, she said, her tone a promise. Tell me everything. Every single detail. We're going to fix this. We're going to make them pay. And in her unwavering resolve, a tiny fragile spark of hope, sharp and dangerous, flickered to life within me. Rebecca's fierce words, echoing in my mind, had been the catalyst. By the time the sun timidly touched the horizon, painting the sky with colors that mocked my internal turmoil, the raw grief had calcified into a singular, unwavering objective: justice. Not just a chaotic outburst, but a meticulously planned dismantling. My first concrete step was to find the right weapon, and Rebecca, ever the strategist, had already provided a name: Mildred Bennett, a divorce attorney whose reputation preceded her like a thunderclap. Mildred was known for her surgical precision, her formidable intellect, and a courtroom record that boasted a long trail of thoroughly vanquished opponents. She was not cheap, Rebecca warned, but she was absolutely ruthless, precisely what I needed. 2 days later, I found myself in Mildred's opulent, yet austere, office overlooking the city. The space was meticulously organized, a reflection, I presumed, of the mind that operated within it. Mildred herself was a woman in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, and a posture that exuded unwavering confidence. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her tailored suit spoke of understated power. There was no saccharine sympathy in her gaze, only a calm, appraising professionalism that immediately put me at ease in a strange way. She listened, her expression unreadable, as I recounted the entire grotesque tale, from the glittering anniversary party to Amanda's innocent, world-shattering pronouncement. I detailed Samuel's ambition, Heather's trusted friendship, the years of deception. When I finished, the silence stretched, thick with unspoken implications. Mildred steepled her fingers, her gaze unwavering. Miss Evans, she began, her voice low and gravelly. What you have described is not merely a marital infidelity. It is a calculated, long-term betrayal involving financial deception and a deliberate manipulation of your trust. This changes the legal landscape significantly. She then laid out the brutal realities with crisp clarity. Divorce, of course, was paramount. Given Samuel's role as Amanda's biological father, child support would be a non-negotiable factor. His income, his assets, his future earnings, they will all be scrutinized to ensure proper provision for the child, regardless of his marital status to Heather. Then came the part that truly ignited the cold fire within me. Beyond the standard division of marital assets, Mildred continued, we need to consider the potential ramifications for Mr. Hayes's business. If any of his assets, or the funds he used to support this parallel life, were obtained through unethical or illegal means, connected to his professional dealings, we can leverage that. Embezzlement, fraud, misuse of company funds. These are all avenues we will explore. We'll look at everything: bank accounts, credit card statements, property records, even his company's ledger. She explained that evidence of such activities could not only severely impact his financial standing, but also lead to criminal charges, effectively dismantling his career and reputation. Her final words were a strategic blueprint, delivered with the precision of a military briefing. To achieve the outcome you desire, Miss Evans, Mildred concluded, we require irrefutable evidence. Every text message, every email, every suspicious transaction, every piece of photographic evidence. Discretion is key. Your husband and his accomplice must remain unaware of the scope of your investigation until we are ready to strike. You must be meticulous. You must be patient. And above all, you must be absolutely ruthless in your pursuit of the truth. Her words didn't offer comfort, but they offered something far more valuable: a path forward, a weapon, and the promise that I would no longer be a victim. I left her office feeling not lighter, but heavier with purpose, the weight of the task ahead a tangible presence, yet also invigorated by the clarity of the fight to come. The first stone had been cast, and its ripples, I knew, would soon become a tidal wave. Mildred's words were a potent cocktail of cold logic and righteous fury, fueling a meticulous campaign that began the moment I stepped back into the house. Our poor house, now a battleground, the facade of Congolese. Normalcy had to be maintained. A delicate charade while Samuel, oblivious, still slept in the guest room, probably nursing a hangover and a convenient amnesia. My first target? The digital trails. Samuel was a creature of habit, and in his arrogance, assumed his digital life was impenetrably. He had neglected to change the passwords I already knew for our shared bank accounts, utility bills, and even his personal email, which he'd set up on our home computer years ago, using a variation of a pet's name and our anniversary date. How ironic. Armed with Mildred's blueprint for evidence, I began to unravel the tapestry of his deceit. The joint bank accounts, once a symbol of our shared future, now held the chilling imprints of his double life. Deposits and withdrawals for consulting fees that never appeared in his official business ledger. Regular substantial transfers to an account I didn't recognize, with an unfamiliar name attached. H. Johnson. Heather's maiden name. My stomach tightened, a cold knot of dread and confirmation. This wasn't just pocket money. These were consistent, strategic transfers, dating back, just as I'd suspected, to mere months after our wedding. 4 years and 7 months, to be precise, before Amanda's innocent voice shattered my reality. I meticulously compiled a digital spreadsheet, each row a new discovery, a new stab to my heart. Dates, amounts, recipients. The early entries were smaller, tentative, then they swelled, coinciding with the purchase of Heather's new car, the down payment on her trendy apartment, the lavish birthday parties she threw for Amanda. Samuel wasn't just supporting them. He was funding their entire lifestyle, right under my unsuspecting nose, likely using funds that should have been ours. Or worse, his company's. My detective work extended beyond the digital. Samuel's home office, usually off-limits due to his confidential client work, became my hunting ground. I worked when he was out. During his long hours at the firm, my heart thumping with a mix of fear and adrenaline. Hidden in a locked drawer beneath a stack of old blueprints, I found a secondary set of financial ledgers. These weren't for his public-facing business. These detailed shadow projects, inflated invoices, and payments routed through shell companies. The numbers were staggering. Far more than what a few affairs would require. This wasn't just about cheating, it was about criminal enterprise. Embezzlement. The word echoed Mildred's earlier speculation, turning the knot in my stomach into a rock. Samuel wasn't just a liar and a cheat. He was a thief, and a reckless one at that. Then came Heather's turn. Her digital footprint was harder to trace, but her physical one, the items she'd left at our house over the years, proved invaluable. A forgotten diary from college, tucked into a box of sentimental items in our guest room closet, held no immediate clues, but years of detailed entries about her life, her dreams, and her interactions with Samuel suddenly took on a sinister new light. Old phone bills, found among her misplaced personal documents that she'd asked me to hold on to for her, revealed a pattern of frequent, long calls to Samuel's private cell number, often late into the night, even when she claimed to be visiting family out of town. The sheer scale of the deception, the audacious way they had woven their illicit existence into the very fabric of my life, was breathtaking. Not a casual affair but a parallel universe, complete with its own finances, its own secrets, and its own child. Each discovery deepened my resolve, hardening the fragile spark of hope into an unyielding, burning flame. The pain was still raw, but now it was transmuted, refined into a potent weapon. I was no longer just a betrayed wife. I was an investigator, a prosecutor, and a judge, all rolled into one, charting the precise coordinates of their downfall, the spreadsheets, the ledgers, the damning calls they lay before me, a meticulous roadmap to their undoing. The time for gathering intel was over. Now, it was time to ignite the fuse, to watch the meticulously crafted chaos unfold. Not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, targeted detonations. I didn't want to be directly associated. Not yet. My strategy was to be the unseen hand, the quiet orchestrator of Samuel and Heather's professional and social demise, allowing the seeds of doubt to bloom into a full-blown public scandal. I began with Samuel's professional life, the very foundation of his inflated ego. Through subtle inquiries to mutual acquaintances in the architecture world, carefully phrased as concerns for Samuel's recent financial stability, or rumors about irregularities in certain project bids, I ensured the right ears, heard the right questions. I knew his key clients, his business partners, his inner circle, a well-placed comment at a charity gala, an anonymous email hinting at potential fiscal mismanagement, sent from a burner account to a minor industry publication, or a casual mention to a former colleague about Samuel's unusually lavish spending habits for a man claiming tight liquidity. These were my tools. I didn't accuse, I merely questioned, planting seeds of doubt that would fester, prompting official inquiries, and making every contract negotiation a little harder, every handshake a little less firm. My background in marketing, ironically, now served me in crafting the perfect smear campaign, one built on insinuation, rather than outright accusation, making it far more difficult to trace or refute. Next, I moved to a more direct, yet still anonymous, tactic. The existence of Amanda, Samuel's secret daughter, was not just a personal affront. It was a legal loophole waiting to be exploited. A carefully worded, anonymous tip to child support services, detailing Samuel's undisclosed child and his significant, unreported income, ensured that the state would soon come knocking. This was not about hurting Amanda. It was about holding Samuel accountable, forcing him to acknowledge his responsibilities, and ensuring that Heather, too, would face the financial implications of her choices. A flicker of guilt, a fleeting pang for the innocent child caught in this web, would sometimes pierce through my resolve, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of Samuel's smile, Heather's knowing glance, and Amanda's innocent, "Daddy," on that dreadful night. They had created this situation. They would face its consequences. My years in marketing had taught me the power of perception, the subtle art of shaping public opinion. My professional network, carefully cultivated over years, now became my most potent weapon. Casual lunches with former colleagues turned into opportunities to express concern over Samuel's increasingly erratic behavior, or unusual financial decisions I'd overheard before our separation. With Heather, it was even easier. Her professional circle often overlapped with mine in smaller, more intimate industry events. I spoke to old acquaintances from her previous workplaces, casually, asking if they'd noticed anything off about her dedication, or discrepancies in her expense reports during her time there. The beauty was in the plausible deniability. I never stated a fact, only raised a question, offered an observation, letting their imaginations fill in the damning blanks. Like a virus, the whispers spread, infecting conversations, breeding mistrust in Samuel's integrity and Heather's professionalism, eroding their carefully constructed facades from the inside out. There were moments, late at night, when a cold dread would prickle my skin. Was I becoming the monster I sought to destroy? Was this meticulous destruction of another person's life any better than their betrayal of mine? Mildred's words, "ruthless in your pursuit of the truth," echoed in my mind. This wasn't just revenge. It was an act of surgical justice, a necessary dismantling of a poisoned foundation. I was simply holding a mirror to their deception, and letting the world see their true reflection. The quiet satisfaction that hummed beneath my skin was a dangerous, intoxicating thing, but it was mine, and I savored every bitter, sweet drop. The sweetness of that bitter victory wasn't merely internal for long. The first tremors of their carefully constructed world beginning to crumble were almost imperceptible. At first, like faint echoes in the periphery of my vision. But soon, the signs became undeniable. Samuel, usually so impeccably composed, started to show cracks in his polished facade. His calls became more frequent, his tone sharper, his dismissiveness towards me more pronounced, though I still maintained my cool, distant politeness. Heather, too, seemed to lose some of her vivacious sparkle. Her phone calls to our house, once almost daily, now ceased entirely. Their professional lives, I observed from my detached vantage point, were clearly encountering unexpected obstacles. The most potent source of my intelligence came from an unlikely ally, Monica, Samuel's longtime receptionist. She had always been a quiet, unassuming woman, efficient and observant. A week after my initial subtle interventions, I called his office, ostensibly to inquire about a joint bill. Monica's voice, usually a calm monotone, had a brittle edge. "Mrs. Hayes," she'd said, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "It's been hectic here. Mr. Hayes is stressed." She didn't elaborate, but the implication was clear. Monica, I knew, had seen Samuel at his most charming, and likely, at his most dismissive. Perhaps she'd grown tired of his casual arrogance, or perhaps she simply possessed a quiet sense of justice. Over the next few days, through carefully timed calls and even a chance encounter at our local coffee shop, Monica became my eyes and ears. She'd offer seemingly innocuous updates. "Mr. Hayes had a very tense meeting with the Sterling Group this morning, Mrs. Hayes. They left quite abruptly." Or, "Ms. Johnson has called multiple times this week, sounding rather frantic, asking for Mr. Hayes, but he's been unavailable." Monica, with her precise memory and quiet disdain for office drama, was reporting the chaos and panic unfolding within Samuel's inner sanctum. Samuel, bless his arrogant heart, was growing increasingly paranoid. Monica relayed tales of him snapping at junior architects, poring over balance sheets with a furrowed brow, and demanding to know who had access to certain client files. He was frantically attempting to identify the source of the issues, completely unaware that the architect of his misfortune was sleeping in the very same house, disguised as his aggrieved wife. I could almost picture him, pacing his office, running through his mental Rolodex of disgruntled employees or rival firms. The beauty of my strategy was its ambiguity. There was no single smoking gun for him to point to, just a pervasive sense of unease, a network of whispers that eroded his credibility from within. He accused David, his business partner, of treachery one evening, his voice booming from his study. I heard the frantic, desperate undertones in Samuel's accusations, the panic that had begun to chip away at his carefully constructed image of control. Heather, too, was spiraling. Monica mentioned her frequently calling Samuel's private line, sometimes even showing up at the office unannounced, her usual poised demeanor replaced by a haggard exhaustion. The once vibrant sapphire dress from the anniversary party seemed a lifetime away. Now, she was seen in drab, ill-fitting clothes, her eyes darting nervously. There were whispers from Monica of heated, hushed arguments between them over the phone, punctuated by Samuel's frustrated sighs and Heather's almost tearful pleas. The strain of keeping their deceit alive had been immense. The strain of watching it unravel was clearly proving unbearable. I, meanwhile, maintained my facade of calm. I cooked dinner, impeccably plated and silently served. I would ask about his day, with feigned concern, carefully observing the involuntary flinch in his eyes, the tightening of his jaw. The quiet satisfaction that hummed beneath my skin was no longer dangerous, but simply intoxicating. It was the taste of justice, bitter and sweet, slowly, meticulously being served. I was observing their desperate struggles from a distance, savoring each subtle sign of their growing discomfort, their escalating paranoia. They were trapped in the web of their own making, and I, the spider, was patiently, silently, watching them thrash. The quiet satisfaction I'd felt from their slow, agonizing unraveling, was merely a prelude. It was time for the main performance, a public unmasking, a meticulously choreographed symphony of their downfall. I sent out invitations, not for a celebration, but for what I vaguely termed a private gathering to clarify recent misunderstandings. It was a deliberate ploy, a lure. Samuel, in his boundless arrogance, likely saw it as an opportunity to control the narrative, perhaps to present a fabricated version of events to our mutual friends, to salvage his reputation. Heather, I imagined, would follow him, desperate for any chance to be seen as anything other than the other woman. The house, my poor house, was once again immaculate, yet the air crackled with a different kind of tension than that fateful anniversary. Every detail was planned, from the specific seating arrangement at the dining table, Samuel and Heather positioned strategically, unable to easily escape or whisper to each other, to the sequence of revelations. Mildred had advised against a public spectacle, but I needed them to face the consequences, not just in court, but in the eyes of those they had so brazenly lied to. This wasn't just legal justice, it was social execution. Our closest friends arrived first, Liam and Chloe, the ever-loyal couple, Mark, Samuel's jovial golf buddy, and Eleanor, my former colleague who had always admired my marriage. Their initial greetings were strained, their eyes darting, unsure how to navigate the obvious fracture in our lives. I offered polite smiles, a picture of wounded but dignified grace. Samuel and Heather arrived last, almost simultaneously, their entrance creating a palpable shift in the room's atmosphere. Samuel, though a touch paler than usual, still exuded his practiced charm, a thin veneer over his obvious anxiety. He attempted a hearty greeting, a feigned camaraderie. Heather, however, was a ghost of her former self. Her sapphire dress was replaced by a somber gray, her usually bright eyes sunken, avoiding mine entirely. She clutched a small handbag, her knuckles white. Dinner proceeded with an agonizing politeness. The small talk was forced, brittle, punctuated by long, awkward silences. Samuel tried to steer conversations towards his latest projects, feigning an interest in the mundane details of our friends' lives, desperate to appear normal. Heather, meanwhile, picked at her food, barely speaking, her uniers radiating across the table. I watched them, calm and detached, occasionally interjecting with a pleasantry, but mostly observing. I let them squirm, letting the anticipation build. The main course was cleared, coffee poured, and a delicate lemon tart placed on the table. The moment had arrived. I took a sip of my coffee, deliberately prolonging the silence, ensuring every eye was on me. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the earthquake raging within. "I know recent events have been unsettling. Samuel and I are indeed divorcing, and I felt it was important for you, our dearest friends, to understand why." I glanced at Samuel, whose bravado was beginning to crack, and then at Heather, who seemed to shrink into her chair. "It's not simply about infidelity," I continued, "but about a profound, years-long deception that has touched every aspect of my life, and frankly, some of yours." I reached beneath the table and pulled out a sleek, leather-bound portfolio. As an executive in marketing, I understand the importance of evidence. I opened it, revealing the meticulously organized documents. "For 4 years and 7 months, I stated, my gaze sweeping across their stunned faces. "Samuel has been leading a double life, not just with Heather, but a financial one as well." I slid several printed bank statements across the table towards Liam and Mark, our friends in finance and business. These are records of significant regular transfers from Samuel's personal account, and some from our joint savings, to an account under the name H. Johnson, Heather's maiden name. I paused, letting the implications sink in. These transfers coincided with purchases Samuel never accounted for, and which I later discovered funded Heather's apartment, her car, and the lifestyle of her daughter Amanda. Samuel erupted. "Teresa, what is this madness? You've gone insane. These are business transactions, client accounts. Are they, Samuel?" I cut him off, my voice still dangerously calm. "Because these," I said, producing printouts of the secondary ledgers I'd found in his office, "tell a different story. Shadow projects, inflated invoices, and payments routed through shell companies, monies that should have gone to your legitimate business, or indeed, our shared future, were funneled elsewhere. Embezzlement. Samuel, that's what Mildred Bennett calls it." Mildred's name, casually dropped, visibly struck him. His face was ashen. I then turned to Heather, who was now openly weeping, her face buried in her hands. "And you, Heather," My best friend, the sister I never had. My voice hardened, laced with a venom I no longer tried to conceal. While you hugged me, confided in me, sat in my home, if you were living off my husband's stolen funds and raising his secret child. I pulled out a series of photographs, discreetly captured images of Samuel and Heather at a park with Amanda, looking every inch a family. Text messages exchanged between them, filled with pet names and intimate details. And then, the most damning of all, a blown-up still from a security camera at a luxury jeweler, showing Samuel presenting Heather with an expensive necklace, a gift he'd claimed to me was for his mother. "Remember Amanda's innocent daddy, at our anniversary party, Samuel?" I asked, my eyes boring into his. "It wasn't a game, it was the truth, finally escaping your web of lies. She is your daughter, Samuel, and you, Heather, allowed this deception to fester for years, destroying not just my marriage, but our friendship, our entire shared history." The room was silent, save for Heather's ragged sobs. Our friends, their faces a mixture of shock and utter revulsion, avoided eye contact with the disgraced pair. Liam, usually so reserved, pushed his chair back, a look of profound disgust on his face. "Samuel," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "if these allegations of embezzlement are true, you're not just a cheat, you're a criminal. This affects us all." Mark, equally stunned, nodded slowly. Eleanor looked at Heather, her expression one of heartbroken betrayal. Samuel, cornered, finally dropped his pretense. "Teresa, please," he stammered, his voice losing its fight. "This is a mistake. Heather was lonely, I was stressed, we just got carried away. Amanda is a blessing, not a weapon." He even tried to appeal to our friends. "You all know how demanding my work is, how much pressure I'm under." Teresa just wasn't understanding. Heather lifted her tear-streaked face. "Teresa, please," she begged. "We can talk about this. Just us. Don't do this to us. Don't ruin everything." "Ruin everything?" I echoed, a cold, humorless laugh escaping me. "You ruined everything, Heather. You and Samuel, with your 4 years of calculated lies. Your secret family, your stolen future. I am merely showing the world the truth you so diligently hid." I closed the portfolio with a soft snap, the sound echoing like a gavel. "There is nothing left to discuss. The truth is laid bare, and now, you will both live with the consequences of that truth." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the weight of judgment. Samuel and Heather, stripped bare of their dignity, their lies exposed, sat isolated at the table, 2 figures drowning in the contempt of their former friends, their world now irreversibly shattered, not by an earthquake. The immediate reverberations of that dinner party were swift and brutal, a cascade of consequences that left no corner of their carefully constructed lives untouched. By the next morning, the carefully cultivated illusions Samuel and Heather had clung to began to peel away, piece by agonizing piece. Liam, usually so composed, called me just after dawn, his voice grim. "Teresa, I had no idea. Samuel, the embezzlement? Mark and I have already scheduled a meeting with David. This is unthinkable." Their words were a confirmation, an assurance that the seeds of doubt I had planted had blossomed into undeniable truth, now bolstered by the public spectacle. David, Samuel's long-suffering business partner, didn't even bother with a call. A terse email arrived from his legal team stating their intention to dissolve their architectural firm, effective immediately. The Sterling Group, one of Samuel's largest clients, followed suit within hours, citing unforeseen reputational risks and canceling their multi-million-dollar project. Other clients, large and small, vanished like smoke, their trust irrevocably shattered. Samuel's reputation, once a gleaming monument to his ambition, was now a pile of rubble. The whispers I had carefully nurtured turned into a roaring inferno, consuming his professional life entirely. His name, once synonymous with innovative design, was now a byword for deceit and scandal in the industry. Heather's collapse was equally dramatic, though perhaps more personal. Social media, a weapon I hadn't explicitly wielded but knew its insidious power, became her public executioner. Mutual friends, those who had dined with us just hours before, silently unfriended her, their digital ties severed. Invitations to social gatherings, once a steady stream, dried up completely. She was no longer just the other woman. She was the friend who betrayed, the accomplice in financial fraud, a pariah. Her employer, a boutique PR firm where she had worked for years, issued a bland press release confirming her departure due to personal reasons, a polite euphemism for being fired. Without Samuel's illicit financial support, and now without a job, her carefully maintained veneer of independence shattered, revealing the stark reality of her financial precariousness. The trendy apartment, the expensive car, the designer clothes, all purchased with funds rooted in deceit, now became symbols of her shame. The phone began to ring, relentlessly at first, a desperate symphony of their panic. Samuel's calls were a volatile mix of anger, threats, and pathetic pleas. "Teresa, what have you done? You've ruined me. We can fix this. Just talk to me. You don't want to see me go to jail, do you?" His voicemails, increasingly frantic, painted a picture of a man rapidly losing control, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Heather's messages were more tearful, more remorseful. "Teresa, please, I'm so sorry. I swear I never meant to hurt you. I was so lonely. Please, I beg you, don't let this happen. Amanda needs a father. She needs stability." She even tried to invoke our old friendship, dredging up shared memories, twisting them into manipulative pleas for my sympathy. I watched the screen, a grim satisfaction blooming in my chest as each new notification popped up. I deleted the voicemails unheard, blocked their numbers, unsubscribed from any shared email lists. There was no wavering, no moment of pity. Their pleas were not born of true remorse, but of fear, of desperation to escape the consequences of their monstrous actions. They wanted to salvage their lives, to somehow rewind time. But the clock had run out. The time for discussion, for compromise was over the moment Amanda had innocently uttered that single, devastating word. I was no longer interested in their justifications or their suffering. My resolve was an iron wall, impenetrable. The taste of victory, initially bitter with the residue of my own pain, was now beginning to turn sweet. It wasn't a triumphant, celebratory sweetness, but a deep, quiet satisfaction that settled into the core of my being. I had promised myself justice, not just revenge, and I was watching it unfold with meticulous precision. They were thrashing in the very web they had spun, their desperate struggles confirming the efficacy of my patient, calculated demolition. Their worlds, once so intricately intertwined with mine, were now completely separate, spiraling down into the abyss of their own making. I, however, was merely observing, detached and resolute, ready for the next inevitable phase of their downfall. The next phase wasn't a distant tremor or a hushed rumor. It was the official, irreversible march of the law, a consequence I had meticulously laid the groundwork for. The phone call from Mildred came exactly as she'd predicted, crisp and efficient. "They've moved," she informed me, her voice devoid of triumph, purely factual. "Samuel Hayes was formally charged this morning. Embezzlement. His partners, David among them, provided additional corroborating evidence. He's been taken into custody. Bail was denied, given the scope of the financial irregularities and the flight risk." A cold calm washed over me, deeper and more profound than any anger or sadness. It was the sound of a closing door, the final, undeniable clang of justice. Samuel, the charming architect, the man who had woven a sophisticated web of lies beneath my very nose, was now just another statistic, another inmate. His ambition, once his greatest asset, had become his undoing, his greed leading him not to glory, but to a starry prison cell. His empire had fallen, not with a bang, but with the quiet, methodical precision of legal documents and irrefutable evidence. Heather's consequence, though it lacked the stark finality of a prison cell, solidified into a different, yet equally inescapably, form. Without Samuel's illicit funds or her now defunct career, the trendy apartment and curated lifestyle she'd maintained had simply ceased to be. Monica, my invaluable informant, delivered the final, almost clinical update. Heather had been compelled to return to her estranged, conservative parents, miles away in a quiet, forgotten suburb. Her once vibrant social circle had irrevocably dissolved, her name now firmly cemented as a cautionary tale of betrayal. The vibrant sapphire dress, a symbol of her former vivacity, was a ghost of a memory, her days now defined by a quiet shame and profound dependence, a stark reversal of the independence she had so brazenly flaunted. Her carefully constructed world, built on deceit and stolen luxury, had definitively collapsed, leaving her to inhabit the stark, unyielding landscape of her choices. She had surrendered every asset she once prized, her social standing, her career, her financial autonomy, all sacrificed at the altar of a treacherous affair, and the payment had now been collected. Through Mildred, I ensured Amanda's future was secured, separate from the wreckage of her parents' lives. Samuel's assets, even those linked to his illicit dealings, were meticulously untangled, with a significant portion earmarked for a trust fund for Amanda's education and well-being. It wasn't about punishing the child. It was about ensuring that Samuel, despite his criminal actions, fulfilled his parental duty, even from behind bars. The child, oblivious to the machinations of adults, would be shielded as much as possible, her future not defined by their failures but by the provisions forced upon him. It was a measure of my own integrity, a silent promise that even in the face of such profound betrayal, I would not allow innocence to suffer unduly. As the legal gears ground, the public narrative solidified, and the private lives of Samuel and Heather were conclusively redefined. There was no burst of celebratory joy. Instead, a deep, quiet resonance settled within me. It wasn't the fleeting triumph of revenge. It was the profound satisfaction of justice, meticulously, patiently, undeniably served. Every lie they had told, every secret they had kept, every person they had wronged, now carried a quantifiable price. Samuel, facing years in prison, stripped of his career and reputation. Heather, exiled and disgraced, stripped of her independence and social standing. Their punishment mirrored their crime, the calculated destruction of a life built on trust. And I, Teresa, was no longer the shattered wife. I was the architect of my own justice, standing firm amidst the debris. Finally free. Freedom, I quickly learned, was not merely the absence of chains. It was the exhilarating, terrifying blank canvas of possibility that stretched before me. The justice I had exacted upon Samuel and Heather had purged the poison, clearing the wreckage of my former life. But true liberation wasn't just about what I had torn down. It was about what I would build in its place. I was no longer defined by the betrayal, nor solely by the act of vengeance. I was now an architect of my own destiny, and the foundation I chose was purpose. The idea for Equitas Solutions began as a quiet hum. In the weeks following Samuel's incarceration and Heather's disgrace, I had emerged from the legal and emotional battlefield, not just with my finances intact, but with an unparalleled understanding of the systemic vulnerabilities of those who, like me, had been deceived. I knew the intricate dance of evidence gathering, the psychological toll of prolonged deception, and the strategic pathways through the legal labyrinth. My experience wasn't a wound, it was a potent skill set. I envisioned a firm that didn't just offer legal advice, but holistic support, empowering individuals to reclaim their lives after betrayal, not just survive it. Mildred Bennett, my formidable attorney, became an early, enthusiastic mentor, recognizing the gap in the market and the unique strength I brought to it. Equitas Solutions wasn't just a business, it was a mission. We specialized in complex divorce cases involving financial infidelity and deep-seated betrayal, offering clients a roadmap for navigating the emotional and legal minefield. My approach was empathetic yet unyielding. I taught them to be meticulous, discreet, and strategically ruthless, just as Mildred had taught me. I saw myself in every client who walked through our doors, the initial shock, the crushing pain, the simmering rage, and finally, the slow, fierce spark of resolve. guiding them through the process, watching them transform from broken victims into empowered individuals, brought a profound satisfaction, far exceeding any material gain. Rebecca, my sister and fiercest ally, quickly became an indispensable partner. She left her stable, if uninspiring, corporate job, drawn by the fierce integrity of our mission, her sharp intellect and uncanny ability to strategize, evident even in those desperate midnight phone calls, proved invaluable in building the firm's infrastructure and expanding our reach. Together, we were a formidable force, a testament to sisterhood forged in the fires of adversity. Our office, unlike Mildred's austere domain, was designed to be a haven. Bright, airy, and filled with art that spoke of resilience and rebirth. My new life wasn't merely financially secure. Though the firm thrived beyond my wildest expectations, it was rich with an independence I hadn't fully grasped. Even in my perfect marriage, I still lived in my Times house, no longer burdened by the ghosts of Samuel's lies. The lavish dining table, once a symbol of shared dreams, was now a place for laughter with Rebecca, or quiet contemplation over a new business plan. My friendships, carefully pruned, bloomed anew with those who had shown genuine loyalty. There was no rush to find new romance. The peace I found in self-sufficiency was more fulfilling than any fleeting companionship. The profound sense of self-worth I cultivated went far beyond the success of Equitas. It was a deep-seated calm, a quiet understanding that I was capable, resilient, and true to myself. The woman who once believed her happiness depended on a man, on a picture-perfect facade, had vanished. In her place stood Teresa, whole and unyielding, who understood that true power lay in authenticity, in facing the darkness and choosing to build light, not just for herself, but for others walking a similar, painful path. My life was no longer a carefully curated masterpiece for public consumption. It was an authentic, resilient empire, built brick by hard-won brick, on my own terms. The woman who once navigated the pristine halls of Samuel's architectural masterpieces was a phantom now, replaced by someone forged in far fiercer fires. My life, with Equitas Solutions thriving and Rebecca by my side, was a testament not to revenge, but to rebirth. Yet, even amidst this hard-won peace, the journey itself, raw and brutal, remained etched into the deepest parts of my being. I often found myself reflecting on the raw agony of that night, the sickening realization that had cleaved my world in two. The pain had been monumental, a physical wound in my chest, but it had also been the crucible in which a new, unbreakable version of myself was forged. The fight that followed was not merely an act of fury, it was an intricate, meticulous dance with justice, a relentless pursuit of accountability for the monumental betrayal I had suffered. The scars, both visible and invisible, remain. They are in the slight tremor of my hand when a new client details their own story of deceit, in the occasional flicker of mistrust in my eyes, when faced with overly polished charm. But these are not wounds that fester. They are the indelible markings of survival, badges of resilience that remind me of the depths from which I rose. They are a testament to the fact that I broke. Yes, but I did not shatter. Instead, I rebuilt myself, piece by agonizing piece, into something stronger, more authentic, and far more formidable than the woman I once was. They whisper not of weakness, but of the strength it took to stare into the abyss of betrayal and choose to fight, to reclaim, to rebuild. For anyone who finds themselves standing amidst the rubble of a life shattered by deceit, I offer this truth. The pain is real, the anger is valid, but you are not condemned to remain a victim. You possess an innate capacity for resilience, a courage you may not yet realize lies dormant within you. It takes time, it takes effort, and sometimes, it takes a ruthless commitment to your own self-preservation. But times rebuild. You can forge a life that is not merely a shadow of what was lost, but a vibrant, authentic testament to your own enduring spirit. Let their betrayal be the fuel, not the chains. Let your transformation be the most profound act of defiance, the ultimate victory. Years later, whispers sometimes reached me of Samuel languishing in a federal prison, his once sharp mind dulled by routine and regret, stripped of everything but the consequences of his greed. Heather, I heard, remained exiled in her parents' suburban home, a ghost of the vivacious woman she once was, living a quiet life of forgotten dreams and profound dependence. Their worlds, once so interwoven with mine, had faded into the distant hum of irrelevance. My concern for Amanda, however, remained. I knew the trust fund Mildred had established continued to grow, a small yet significant act of quiet defiance against their legacy of lies. My own path, however, stretched endlessly before me, unburdened by their shadows, illuminated by the light I had painstakingly built. My empire, unlike Samuel's hollow facade, was real, thriving, and entirely, gloriously mine, built not on borrowed dreams, but forged in the fire of my own indomitable will.